Step away from the truck. Now.
Officer, the load is flagged and secured.
Okay.
That's legal in Georgia.
I didn't ask for a lecture. You're detained.
For what crime?
Turn around. Hands behind your back.
I am complying under protest.
That was the greeting Elias Thorne received on a bright Tuesday afternoon in October. He wasn't robbing a bank. He wasn't brandishing a weapon. He was standing in the parking lot of a hardware store in Marietta, Georgia, carefully sliding a stack of treated 2x4s into the bed of his Ford F-150. Elias didn't flinch. At 55 years old, with a spine stiffened by decades of morning ruck marches and a demeanor carved out of granite. He didn't panic easily. He simply paused his gloved hands resting on the tailgate and turned his head slowly to address the source of the noise. Standing 10 feet away was Officer Kyle Braden. He couldn't have been more than 28 years old, his uniform crisp, his sunglasses expensive, and his hand hovering dangerously close to his service weapon. The officer's chest was puffed out, a posture that Elias recognized immediately. It wasn't the posture of confidence. It was the posture of insecurity, masquerading as authority. "Is there a problem, officer?" Elias asked. His voice was a deep baritone, steady and devoid of fear. It was the voice of a man who had issued commands under mortar fire, though Officer Braden had no way of knowing that yet. "The problem is you're operating a vehicle with an illegal modification and creating a road hazard," Braden snapped, stepping closer, invading Elias's personal space. "I watched you pull out of the loading bay. You're preparing to enter a public roadway with your tailgate down. That is a violation of state traffic code. Now back away from the truck." Elias looked at the officer, then back at his truck. The bed was too short to close the tailgate with the 12-foot boards inside. This was a standard dilemma for anyone who owned a pickup truck. It was Tuesday. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and this young man was ready to escalate a trip to the hardware store into a felony stop. "Officer," Elias said, turning fully to face him, keeping his hands visible, a survival habit for a black man in America that he had taught his sons and that his father had taught him. "The tailgate is down because the payload exceeds the bed length. I have a red flag attached to the end of the load as required by law. I am securing the load with ratchet straps now. There is no violation here." "I didn't ask for a law lecture from a civilian." Braden barked, his face flushing a shade of angry pink. "I gave you a lawful order. Step away from the vehicle. You are currently detained for an unsafe vehicle investigation." Elias didn't move. He knew that unsafe vehicle investigation was police shorthand for, "I don't like your attitude and I'm going to find something wrong." He looked at Braden's nameplate. "Officer Braden, I am securing my property so that I can safely talk to you. If I leave this lumber unsecured, that creates the safety hazard you claim to be worried about." "Last warning," Braden shouted, drawing the attention of shoppers pushing carts full of mulch and drywall. "Step away." Elias slowly lowered the ratchet strap he was holding, placed it on the truck bed, and took 2 deliberate steps back. He stood at parade rest, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped loosely in front of his belt buckle. He looked Braden in the eye. "I am complying, but you are making a mistake, son." The word "son" seemed to act like a physical slap to Officer Braden. His jaw tightened, and he closed the distance between them, standing chest to chest with Elias. The height difference was negligible, but the difference in presence was massive. Elias stood like a rooted oak tree. Braden vibrated with nervous, aggressive energy. "You don't call me son," Braden hissed. "You address me as officer, and since you think you know the law so well, let's see some identification, driver's license and proof of insurance. Now." Elias didn't break eye contact. "Am I being cited for a specific violation, officer? Because, as I stated, Georgia Code 40-8-27 allows for a load to extend beyond the rear of the vehicle provided it is flagged with a red marker at least 12 inches square, which I have done." Braden's eyes darted to the end of the lumber. There was indeed a bright red flag stapled securely to the end of the wood. It was textbook compliance. A smarter officer would have nodded, said, "My mistake, sir. Drive safely," and walked away. But Braden had already committed. He had an audience now. A few people had stopped loading their cars to watch, and backing down would bruise an ego that was already fragile. "I'm not going to debate the code with you on the side of the road," Braden said, shifting the goalposts. "I'm detaining you for suspicious behavior. We've had reports of theft of building materials in this area. You fit the description of a suspect." Elias almost laughed, but he held it back. "A suspect. A black man in a truck at a hardware store. That's your description? I need to see your ID to verify you aren't wanted for those thefts," Braden said, his hand resting on his taser now. "Stop resisting my investigation. Asking you to articulate the reasonable suspicion for a detention is not resistance," Elias said calmly. "It is a foundational right, but to expedite this, I will provide my identification. I am reaching for my back right pocket." Elias moved with agonizing slowness. He telegraphed every motion. He knew that one twitch, one fast movement could give this jumpy officer the excuse he was seemingly desperate for. He withdrew his leather wallet. Inside, next to his Georgia driver's license, was his Department of Defense identification card, the blue card reserved for retired military personnel. He handed both to Braden. Braden snatched them. He glanced at the driver's license. "Elias Thorne," he read aloud, as if testing the name for flavor. Then he looked at the military ID. He scoffed, a short derisive sound that echoed in the quiet parking lot. "What is this?" Braden asked, flipping the card over. "You get this at a pawn shop? Or are you one of those stolen valor types trying to get out of a ticket?" The air in the parking lot seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elias's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. That card represented 25 years of his life. It represented tours in the Gulf, peacekeeping in the Balkans, and 2 deployments to Afghanistan. It represented missed birthdays, lost friends, and a knee that still ached when it rained. "That is a valid United States Department of Defense identification card," Elias said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly quiet. "I am a retired major in the United States Army. I suggest you treat it, and me, with the requisite respect." Braden laughed. It was a nervous, bullying laugh. "A major, you look at you. You're dressed like a handyman." "I am a handyman today," Elias said. "I'm building a deck for my wife, but that doesn't change my rank or my rights." By now, a small crowd had gathered. About 20 feet away, a burly white man in a neon construction vest held up his phone. "I'm filming this, buddy," the man shouted toward the officer. "He's got the flag on the truck. Leave him alone." Braden whipped his head around. "Back up, or you're next." He turned back to Elias, his frustration boiling over. The license was valid. The truck was registered to Elias. There were no warrants. The load was legal. Braden had nothing, but he had pride, and toxic pride is a dangerous thing in a man with a badge. "I think this ID is fake," Braden said, shoving the cards into his own pocket. "And I think you're becoming belligerent. You're causing a scene." "I haven't raised my voice once, officer. You are the one shouting," Elias pointed out. "If you run that ID, it will come back valid. If you call your supervisor, they will tell you to let me go. I'm giving you an off-ramp here, Officer Braden. Take it." It was the off-ramp comment that sealed it. It sounded like a command. Braden didn't take commands. He gave them. "Turn around," Braden ordered, unclipping his handcuffs. "Hands behind your back." "For what?" Elias asked, not moving yet. "Disorderly conduct, failure to obey a lawful order, and suspicion of possessing forged government documents." Elias looked at the officer. He looked at the camera filming him. He looked at the sky. He took a deep breath. He had the physical capability to put Officer Braden on the ground in less than 3 seconds. He knew the mechanics of leverage and pain compliance better than Braden ever would. But Elias also knew that if he fought back physically, he would die in this parking lot, and the narrative would be violent ex-military suspect attacks hero cop. So Elias chose the harder path, the path of discipline. "I am complying under duress," Elias stated clearly for the camera. He turned around slowly. He brought his wrists together behind his back. The steel cuffs bit into Elias's wrists. Braden ratcheted them tight, too tight. It was a petty, punitive move. Elias didn't wince. He stood tall, his posture perfect, even in restraints. "You're making a mistake that will end your career," Elias said softly so only Braden could hear. "Shut up," Braden grunted, shoving Elias toward the patrol car. "Hey," the construction worker with the phone yelled. "What are you arresting him for? He didn't do anything. Interfering with an investigation," Braden shouted back. He opened the back door of his cruiser and pushed Elias inside. The back of a police car is designed to be uncomfortable. The hard plastic seat forces the body into an unnatural angle, especially with hands cuffed behind the back. Elias sat closing his eyes for a moment to center himself. He began to catalog everything: the time of day, the officer's name, the unit number of the car, the specific accusations made. Braden got into the driver's seat. He was breathing heavy, the adrenaline dump shaking his hands. He picked up the radio. "Dispatch 1 Adam 12, 1 in custody, transporting to Central." "Copy 1 Adam 12. Charges..." Braden hesitated. "Disorderly obstruction. And verify a 1028 on a suspect claiming federal status." Elias sat in the back silent. He watched the back of Braden's head. He saw the officer checking his reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting his sunglasses, trying to look cool. But Elias saw the sweat on the man's neck. Braden knew deep down that this had gone sideways, but he was riding the tiger now. He couldn't get off without being bitten. The drive to the station took 15 minutes. Not a word was spoken. Elias used the time to meditate. He thought about the oath he had taken to support and defend the Constitution. He thought about the irony of defending that Constitution in Kandahar, only to have it violated in a Home Depot parking lot in Georgia. But anger wasn't useful right now. Strategy was useful. When they pulled into the sally port of the police station, the heavy metal doors clanked shut behind them, sealing out the daylight. Braden hauled Elias out of the car. "Walk," Braden said, gripping Elias's arm unnecessarily hard. They walked through the booking intake. It was a busy afternoon. Officers were processing a drunk driver. A detective was interviewing a witness. The noise level was high, but it dropped noticeably when the tall, dignified black man in work boots and a flannel shirt was marched in, head held high, looking more like a visiting dignitary than a criminal. Behind the high booking desk sat Sergeant Miller. Miller was a relic of the old breed white hair, a mustache that had been out of style since 1985, and eyes that had seen everything. He was a Vietnam veteran, a former Marine who ran the booking floor with absolute precision. Braden walked Elias up to the counter. "Booking 1 for disorderly and obstruction," Braden announced, tossing Elias's wallet onto the counter. Sergeant Miller looked up from his computer. He looked at Elias. Then he looked at Braden. "Disorderly?" Miller asked, his voice gravelly. "He looks pretty calm to me, Braden." "He was causing a scene in a public parking lot. Refused lawful orders." Miller sighed. He picked up the wallet to begin the inventory. He opened it. The first thing he saw was the driver's license. The second thing he saw was the blue Department of Defense card. Miller paused. His fingers stopped typing. Then he saw something else tucked into the billfold of the wallet. It was a heavy brass coin inlaid with enamel, a challenge coin. But not just any coin. It was a coin from a 4-star general given for excellence in command. Miller knew what that coin meant. You didn't buy those at a surplus store. You bled for them. Sergeant Miller picked up the coin. He felt the weight of it. He looked at the military ID again. Major Elias Thorne, U.S. Army retired. Miller slowly closed the wallet and placed it gently on the desk. He stood up. He wasn't a tall man, but he carried the weight of 40 years of policing. He looked at Officer Braden with an expression of profound disappointment mixed with alarm. "Uncuff him," Miller said. Braden blinked. "What, Sarge? He's a suspect. I haven't processed him yet." "I said uncuff him. Now." Miller's voice wasn't a shout. It was a growl. "Sarge, he was resisting. He had this fake ID." "Fake," Miller interrupted. "Braden, you idiot. That is a retired field officer's identification. And this," he tapped the coin, "is a commander's coin from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Do you have any idea who you have in handcuffs right now?" Elias spoke for the first time since entering the station. "Sergeant, I appreciate your recognition, but before these cuffs come off, I want the watch commander present. I want the body camera footage secured, and I want a formal record of this arrest." Braden laughed nervously. "See, he's telling us how to run the station. He's arrogant." Miller ignored Braden entirely. He looked at Elias. "Major, I apologize. My officer here. He's new. He made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting to signal a turn," Elias said, his voice echoing in the booking room. "Depriving a citizen of their liberty because of their race and a bruised ego is not a mistake. It is a civil rights violation. I am not unarresting myself until Captain Reynolds is here." Braden went pale. "How do you know Captain Reynolds?" "I know the command structure of the local precinct because I am an active member of the community board," Elias said. "Something you might know if you engaged with the community instead of harassing it." Miller picked up the phone. He punched in a 4-digit extension. "Captain, you need to come down to booking. Now." "Yes, sir. It's a code red situation with a personnel matter." Braden stepped in it. "Deep." While they waited, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Other officers who had been processing paperwork stopped. They looked at Braden, who was shifting his weight from foot to foot, realizing he was on an island. They looked at Elias, who stood with his back to the counter, hands still cuffed, staring at a blank wall with zen-like patience. The door to the inner offices swung open. Captain Reynolds marched out. He was a sharp man, politically savvy, who was trying to clean up the department's image. He saw Elias. He stopped dead in his tracks. "Major Thorne," Reynolds asked, incredulous. "What the hell is going on, Captain?" Elias nodded respectfully. "I am currently under arrest for loading lumber into my truck while black." Captain Reynolds turned slowly to Officer Braden. "Braden, keys. Now!" Braden fumbled for his keyring. Reynolds snatched them, walked behind Elias, and unlocked the handcuffs himself. The metal clicked, and Elias brought his arms forward, rubbing his wrists. The skin was broken and bleeding slightly where the metal had dug in. "Medical!" Reynolds shouted. "Get a kid over here." "I don't need a medic," Elias said calmly. "I need preservation of evidence." "Major, let's go to my office," Reynolds said, his tone conciliatory. "We can sort this out. I'm sure Officer Braden misunderstood the situation. We can drop all charges immediately. You're free to go." "I know I'm free to go, Captain. I broke no laws," Elias said, not moving. "But I'm not going to your office for a quiet chat. I want the booking report completed. I want the arrest log to reflect exactly what happened. If you wipe this from the system, you are covering up a crime." Reynolds rubbed his temples. He knew exactly what was happening. He was looking at a lawsuit that would eat the department's budget for the next 3 years. "Major, please. Braden is zealous. He's young. He is dangerous," Elias corrected. "I spent 25 years leading young men with rifles. I know the difference between a soldier who made a mistake and a bully who likes the power. That man," he pointed a long finger at Braden, "is a bully. And today, he picked the wrong victim. But what if I had been an 18-year-old kid? What if I hadn't known the law? I'd be in a cell right now with a record that would ruin my future." Braden tried to speak up. "Captain, he had the tailgate down. It was unsafe." "Shut your mouth, Braden," Reynolds snapped. Go to the conference room. Surrender your weapon and your badge to Sergeant Miller. You are on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Get out of my sight." Braden looked around the room. No one would meet his eyes. He stripped off his badge and gun belt, slamming them onto the counter with a petulant clatter, and stormed out. Reynolds turned back to Elias. "Major, I am deeply sorry. This is not how we operate." "It is exactly how you operate, Captain, because you hired him. You trained him. And you put him on the street," Elias said. "I want the body cam footage. I want the dash cam. And I want the security footage from the hardware store. I'm sure your investigators can pull that. I'll be filing a FOIA request in the morning, and my attorney will be filing a suit in federal court by Friday." "Can't we settle this here?" Reynolds asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can handle Braden internally." "This isn't about Braden anymore," Elias said, picking up his wallet and his challenge coin. He rubbed the thumb over the raised metal of the coin. "This is about the system that allows Braden to exist. I fought for freedom overseas, Captain. I'll be damned if I don't fight for it here." Elias Thorne was a man of his word. The lawsuit Thorne versus the City of Marietta was filed 4 days later. It was a masterpiece of legal precision, alleging unlawful seizure, false arrest, and violation of First and Fourth Amendment rights. But the real damage happened in the court of public opinion. The construction worker, Hank, had posted his video to YouTube. He titled it, "Cop Tries to Bully Retired Army Major. Big Mistake." The algorithm picked it up. Within 48 hours, it had 4 million views. The video was damning. It showed a calm, respectful black man citing the law while an aggressive, erratic officer screamed and escalated. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Viewers saw the red flag on the lumber. They saw the compliance. They saw the cuffs go on. Then the body cam footage was released as part of the discovery process. That was even worse. The audio captured Braden's sneering comment about the military ID. "You buy this at a surplus store." That soundbite played on every evening news channel in America. Veterans groups were outraged. The VFW issued a statement. The NAACP got involved. The comments section of the video became a digital riot of support for Elias. "This man served his country, and this is how he gets treated," wrote one user from Texas. "I'm a police officer of 20 years, and Braden is a disgrace to the badge," wrote another. The internal affairs investigation into Officer Braden was swift and brutal. Investigators pulled his history. They found a pattern. Over his 3 years on the force, Braden had issued citations to black male drivers at a rate 400% higher than his peers. He had a history of equipment violation stops that turned into warrantless searches. He had 6 excessive force complaints, all dismissed by a previous supervisor who had since retired. Elias's lawyer, a sharp civil rights attorney from Atlanta, sat across from the city attorney. "We aren't just suing for damages," the lawyer said. "We want a consent decree. We want policy changes. And we want Braden's certification revoked so he can never wear a badge in this state again." The city attorney looked at the evidence. He looked at the polling numbers for the mayor. He looked at the potential jury award if this went to trial. A jury would look at Elias Thorne, dignified, articulate, a hero, and they would give him the keys to the city treasury. "We'll settle," the city attorney said. "Name your number." The settlement was finalized 3 months later. The city agreed to pay Elias Thorne $1.2 million. But the money wasn't the headline. The headline was the termination of Kyle Braden. The Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council Post revoked his certification. At 28 years old, his law enforcement career was over. He would never hold power over another citizen again. 6 months after the incident, Elias Thorne drove his F-150 back to the same hardware store. It was a Tuesday. The sun was shining. He bought lumber for a new project, a ramp for a disabled neighbor. He loaded the wood. He attached the red flag. He secured the ratchet straps. A police cruiser rolled slowly through the parking lot. The officer behind the wheel was young black and female. She saw Elias. She saw the red flag. She slowed down, rolled down her window, and nodded. "Load looks secure, sir," she said. "Have a good day." "You too, officer," Elias replied. He finished loading and got into his truck. He sat there for a moment, his hands on the steering wheel. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel joy. He felt a quiet, heavy relief. The settlement money was already gone. Elias had set up a legal defense fund for veterans who couldn't afford lawyers, men and women who had been chewed up by the system after they came home. He thought about Braden. He heard the man was working in landscaping now, hauling mulch, doing the hard work he used to look down on. Maybe it would teach him humility. Maybe not. Elias started the engine. He had stood his ground. He had refused to be small. And in doing so, he had made the world just a tiny bit safer for the next person who looked like him. He pulled out of the parking lot, merging into traffic, just another man in a truck driving home to his wife. But as he drove, he checked his rearview mirror out of habit. The road was clear. This story isn't just about a bad cop or a settlement check. It's about the silent strength of knowing who you are when the world tries to tell you otherwise. Elias Thorne didn't win because he fought back with fists. He won because he fought with character. He proved that dignity is a weapon that no pair of handcuffs can lock away. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many Elias Thornes are out there who didn't have a witness with a camera? How many times does this happen in the shadows? If this story resonated with you, if you believe that respect is something earned and not just demanded by a badge, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had to stand your ground against authority? Let's talk about it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We tell the stories of the real heroes, the ones you might pass in the hardware store aisle every day. See you in the next one. Dan.